BNC, 100% black and brown host around the clock. Finally, news that speaks to us.
Joining us now to discuss the state of being black in America are BNC political contributor Ameshia Cross and conservative political commentator Jeff Charles. Welcome to the program, Jeff and Ameshia. From your perspective, Ameshia, what is the state of black America, particularly what the circumstances that have unfolded in this past year?
Well, to your point in the opening, I think that inflation obviously affects people across this country, but Black America the greatest because of the lack of historical wealth and the income disparities that exist across our communities. We've also seen a rise in mental health crises. We've also seen the high cost of childcare, particularly for Black women who are often raising children by themselves, who do not have a secret piggy bank somewhere to help them be able to afford those exorbitant rates. And then I also think that we have to look at the plight of our Black men in this country. And it's not just in regard to criminal justice reform, it's also in regard to economic development and economic opportunity. Many of them have been shut out of economic opportunity since the fall of the industrial age in this country. And I think that we have to continually look at the fact that Black people on every phase of progress, be it whether it's healthcare access, educational access and opportunity, or economic development, continually see themselves at the very bottom of that list.
Jeff, it used to be that there was a reality for Black people and a reality for white people, and now there seems to be a reality for those who simply deny the election results happened the way they did, and just a denial of all reality. How is that something that Black families can try to combat?
Well, I mean, our history in America has been one of overcoming whatever it is that we're confronted with. I mean, when we were under Jim Crow, we overcame that. We still have our Black Wall Street. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is hunky-dory now. I mean, like Ameshia said, there are a lot of challenges that we face, largely because of historical policies that were specifically designed to put us behind. So it's no wonder that inflation and high gas prices and everything else going on right now is affecting us more than other Americans.
So let's talk, Ameshia, about the assault that's going on in terms of voting rights. We've seen it in Texas, and we're seeing it in other places like Florida, for example, which is now putting together a quote-unquote election police force to look for massive voter fraud. And of course, a lot of this is based on the big lie of the 2020 presidential election. What can Black Americans do to deal with this kind of these kinds of tactics and gerrymandering and voting rights, which is actually causing undue concern or a lot of concern that is due because of what's happening to them in terms of going to the polls and being suppressed?
No, absolutely. And gerrymandering and voter rights restrictions, by and large, were a part of the Southern strategy long before Donald Trump ran for office. I think that we have to acknowledge the historical relevance to these voter inequities that have been happening across minority communities for quite some time. With that being said, Black people have done what they should be doing. We showed up and showed out in 2020. Our voices were heard loud and clear. We continue to advocate against these very harsh voter suppression regulations and laws that are being passed in states across this country, not only in the South, but in some northern areas as well. But I think that there has to be a federal response. There has to be a federal response at this point. We are not going to be able to out-organize oppressors at the state level who are passing these laws in very quick order. With that being said, there has to be a response, a reaction from our congressional leaders in both the House and the Senate. They have to ensure that they're passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, that they're passing the For the People Act, that they are being attentive to ensuring that voting rights are solidified across this country, because that's the glue that holds our democracy together. If you are an African American, if you are a Latino person across this country, if you are an indigent individual, if you are a student, it should not be extremely difficult for you to access the ballot as an American. And what we see across southern states, as well as some northern ones, is that their elected officials, particularly Republicans, are choosing their voters instead of letting their voters choose them. And that's what these policies are designed to do.
Hey, Jeff, in the last minute we have left together, is there a generational disconnect here? Because President Biden could just cancel student debt tomorrow, closing the black-white wealth gap by about 30%.
Well, I mean, Democrats always promise that stuff and they never do it. So Biden doesn't have any reason to do it because we're going to vote for him anyway. When it comes to voting rights, that's just Democrats and leftists using black trauma to manipulate. Like Ameshia said, we came out in record numbers in 2020. Nobody's keeping black people from voting. They're saying that the thing to be able to vote, we have to make sure that we vote. Well, how do we vote if they're keeping us from voting? It's not happening. And I'm not even in favor of all these laws that have been passed, but the notion that we're in Jim Crow 2.0 is absurd.
All right, I want to thank you both. We have to leave it there. Obviously, that will cause a lot of discussion that we'd like to have. BNC political contributor Ameshia Cross and conservative political commentator Jeff Charles. Appreciate you both for joining us this hour.